This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and so the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for Monday, October 20th at 7 o'clock. Tonight, we do have, we'd like to start off our meeting with our land acknowledgement. Councillor Murion.
Thank you, Mayor Little, and good evening, everyone. We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murion. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated with the package. I'd like to make one small amendment, which is to move the Poppy delegation to ahead of the public input period. With that, is there a seconder for the seconded by Councillor? I'll prepare to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. Council, we have a set of meeting minutes from public hearing of September 16th, 2025. Any errors or omissions from those meeting minutes as presented? Hearing none, will someone move their adoption? Moved by Councillor Forbes, second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. At this point, we are going to move into the Poppy delegation. So I'm going to ask everybody to rise as we receive the color party. Thank you. Welcome to the delegation. Please come on up to the table here. Everybody, please take your seat. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the council. Ooh.
Mayor Little, members of council, guests. Good evening. My name is Joe Phillips. I'm the president of the Lynn Valley Legion Branch 114. With me this evening are our first vice president, Dave Joyce, our treasurer, Jim Phillipson, executive members, Donna Sorensen, and our photographer, executive member, Dwight Robinson, and members of the Lower Mainland Color Party. We would like to thank you for this opportunity to address council and perform our annual presentation of First Poppy, which officially launches our Poppy campaign, which this year runs from Friday, October the 31st to Remembrance Day, which is November the 11th. The Royal Canadian Legion was founded on November the 25th, 2025. This year, the Legion is 100 years old. The Lynn Valley branch was chartered on December the 24th, 1930. This year, our branch has had the distinction of serving the community for 95 years. We are Canada's oldest based social and advocacy organization. Our mission is to serve veterans, including serving military, RCMP, first responders, and their families, to promote remembrance and to serve our community and country. We distributed over 18,000 poppies last year through the school system, both public and private. Every student receives a poppy, or where age appropriate, a sticker. Also, over 30,000 poppies were distributed as the public made very generous donations. Our poppy campaign last year generated over $96,000 and through the generous support of the citizens of the District of North Vancouver. These funds are used for veterans housing, Honor House, Honor Ranch, Brock Farney, George Darby, veteran education, the UBC Vet Transition Program, BCIT Vet Military Conversion Program. Veteran services, we support PADS, which is the Pacific Assistance Dog Society, BC Alberta Guide Dogs, and Veterans Offspring Bursaries. Our branch is also very proud to have raised an additional $75,000 through our gaming program. And through gaming, we support things like Boy Scouts, the Canadian Council of the Blind, Capilano Community Services, Children of the Street, Lionsgate Hospital Foundation, Lynn Valley Soccer Association, New Chelsea Society, North Shore Meals on Wheels, North Shore Disability Resource Center, North Shore Family Services, North Shore Rescue, Salvation Army, Sharing Abundance, Union Gospel Mission, various District of North Vancouver sports teams, and also the volunteer cancer drivers. We're very fortunate with the support that we receive from the community. And Mayor Little and members of council, we'd like to thank you for your support. At this point, we would like to hand out our poppies. I'll ask Donna Sorensen to help me with this. Look at that. Have a minute 40 left.
So walk slow.
We didn't put the sharp pins in this year.
Yes, we appreciate
Have yourself. Perhaps a photo op?
Yeah, let's do that. Would you like to bring the color guard into the middle and then we'll have frame up in front of the color guard?
Want to bring the color party into the center?
If you give us 30 seconds, I'm sure many of us can get these.
Oh, perfect.
Some of us just took a couple.
That's true.
Do you want council in the center?
Yes, please.
We might have to get a little tighter than that. We're gonna have to cozy up.
Cozy up.
Come on in.
Won't be me.
And forward a little bit and maybe.
I guess you should go
You're gonna go. There we go. There we go.
Sure.
Well, you're gonna get back here. If you want to stand there. We're gonna cozy in. Don't wait. You get us all? Where's Dwight?
Right.
Dwight, come on in. I can stand in front of the mayor.
You guys
He's a
are
little
beautiful.
taller than me.
Oh, there it is. Thank you all. Oh. Like you've done this every year.
Good? Is that? Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'll make some quick comments before they. There we go.
Yeah.
Bought yourself some time. Thank you. And just, council, we have the delegation here, so it does provide a quick opportunity for commentary. I did just want to say how much I appreciate all of the volunteer work you do in the community, the amazing fundraising you do. My son's in cadets, and so they have a lot of fun doing the poppy tagging during the season, going out to different venues and reminding people to wear their poppy, to show their support, make a donation. And that all contributes to all of the amazing donations that you guys can pass on to the community. And so I did want to say on behalf of our council, we really deeply appreciate the work you do in the community and look forward to seeing you out and about in the community promoting the Poppy campaign. And ultimately, we have 3 Remembrance Day ceremonies that we support in our community. One at Victoria Park in the city of North Vancouver, one at the Honor Plaza up at Lynn Valley Archives, and one at Kate's Park, which is a combination of sea-based and land-based for that one as well. So the district does support all 3 of those recognitions. Yes, please.
Your Honor, actually, the one you mentioned is actually at the Legion this year.
At the Legion itself. Okay.
On the grounds, tents and everything. So
yeah.
Certainly welcome the community.
It is a little quieter up at that spot rather than the old Lynn Valley spot, so that's good. But we encourage everybody to take part in that and observe that day and try to make it as easy for people to find one that's suitable to them. I recommend if you have kids and you want to bring them out, that the one out in Kate's Park has lots of parking close by and it's easy for families to get around, but it is a little bit slippery. And so if you're worried about your footing, I highly recommend the Lynn Valley Legion location as being a space, because both Victoria Park and Kate's Park can get quite slippery on rainy fall days. With that, council, I think I'm going to ask for receipt of the delegation been received. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. And I'll ask you to stand if you're willing and able as we hold for the color party to receive. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you. All right. District North Vancouver Council sets aside a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of every regular meeting for public input. Any member of the public can come and speak to the council for up to 3 minutes at the front end. We do have a sign-up sheet that gets filled out ahead of time, and it's getting full. And so we'll set aside a half hour, and if we have a time for additional speakers, I will go out and ask for more speakers. At this point, I have 6 speakers. We can usually expect to get through about 10 speakers, but we're going to start with the list that we have posted on top here on the slide. So at this point, I'm going to welcome Joanne Chua. Welcome, and when you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Little and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to agenda item 8.5 regarding bylaws 8758, 8759, and 8760. My name is Joanne Chua. I'm an asset manager at Grosvenor, representing the owner of the Knott development in Edgemont Village. While the staff report to council referenced some of our comments, we appreciate the opportunity to formally voice our concerns regarding the proposed liquor store relocation and zoning amendment. On bylaw 8758, it's critical to advise council that the applicant, our tenant, has 5 years remaining on its lease with a use provision that is restricted to an operation of a liquor store, including for any prospective assignment of the lease. Although this relates to a private lease matter, council's decision to relocate the liquor store will contribute to the tenant's breach of their contractual obligation to us. We do believe this would be punitive to the landlord. Regarding bylaw 8760, we strongly oppose the removal of the liquor store use from our site. Grosvenor underwent an extensive multi-year public process, that granted us these land use rights. To require future rezoning for this same use is unproductive and undermines the development process and sets a concerning precedent. Given that provincial legislation covers the field on radius restrictions, we do request clarity on the rationale and strongly oppose this proposed removal. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. The next speaker I have is Eric Jensen, joining us virtually.
Sorry I couldn't be there in person, everybody. I have family in from out of town, and you guys look great in the photo, though.
Hold on just a moment, Mr. Jensen. I'm going to get to you in just a half sec. I think what Councillor Murray is saying that if you have a written proposal or written comments, you can email them to us and they'll be shared with the council. It goes for anyone. You can also send stuff to input@dnv.org or leave your comments in the black tray on the center desk there, and we'll make sure it gets copied and submitted and shared with all of council. Okay, Mr. Jensen, coming over to you next. Just when you were talking there, you were coming in really soft, so I'm going to encourage you to get nice and close to your microphone.
Oh, all right. Well, I can turn that up. Is that better?
That does help, but just speak directly into your microphone. Thank you.
All right. Is that better? I got
much better. Thank you.
All right. No worries at all. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will be speaking tonight to items 8.2, 8.3, and if I get time, 8.6 this evening. I've already spoken to the waste of effort that is the amendments to the demolition waste reduction bylaw We're adding another inspection, more documentation, and a whole new round of fines for work that's already covered by existing deposits and compliance reports. If council really wants to increase compliance, then streamline it. Create one clear standard, not a patchwork of random site visits and fines. If this bylaw really wants to save material, start by recycling the red tape. The current version just turns sustainability into a paperwork contest. Now, let's talk about 8.3, which is the financial plan amendment. The district, it seems, is spending like it's in a boom, borrowing like you're in a bus, and we're calling it balanced. For all the talk of financial prudence, I don't see much preparation for what happens when DCCs and ACCs drop as the market cools. Let's start with the basics. Operating costs are up 11% year over year. That's not inflation. That has to be expansion. The single biggest jump isn't police, fire, or utilities. It's government or governance and administration, which is up 32% in 1 year. Meanwhile, planning and development is actually shrinking by 6%, right when the district is rewriting the OCP and trying to meet new housing mandates. Residents are being told this is a 5.5% property tax increase to maintain services, but that's only half the story, because utilities are up another 10 to 11%, mostly thanks to our friends at Metro Vancouver's wastewater mess. To soften the hit, you guys plan to pull $15 million from reserves over the next 5 years just to stabilize rates. Now that's, in my opinion, not sustainable fiscal management. It's duct tape. And added up, the average family is facing a 15 to 16% combined increase in taxes and utilities for the same level of service. Capital spending is another red flag. There's been tens of millions trimmed from projects. Then we've boosted borrowing by about $7 million this year to make the math work. The plan also quietly confirms the infrastructure levy climbs to 1.5% by 2027. A built-in tax increase baked right into the forecast. And reserves, which are meant for emergencies, I thought, are now a budget line to offset Metro's bad math. Once those are gone, what happens when we hit a real emergency? Every line of this plan talks about resiliency, but there's nothing resilient about using savings to cover operating costs while debt climbs roughly 50% in 5 years. This, in my opinion, is not financial resiliency, it's financial gymnastics. And I would urge council to start saying no to additional asks from staff, look for ways to spend less, and consider affordability for our residents. Otherwise, we're heading for a fiscal wall. If I have time later, I'll talk about the OCP, but I know I'm out of time, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to hear me out. Thank you as always.
Thank you, Eric Jensen, for your comments. The next speaker I have is Hazen Colbert, joining us virtually.
Good evening, Mayor Little.
Welcome. I can hear you clearly. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Great. So I'm going to cover very quickly a number of items. The first thing I want to say is that I understand everything that Eric Jensen has just said in the preceding with respect to we're heading toward a financial wall. What we need to understand is that not only the District of North Vancouver, but all municipalities in Canada have a massive infrastructure deficit due to pandering to single-family homeowners over the last 15 to 40 years. Instead of having proper infrastructure funds created, there was always concern that the property taxes would go up too much, and the single-family homeowners, which represent about 99.9% of the people that vote in municipal elections, would get upset. So there's a problem there, and I don't know how we reduce taxes when we've got this massive infrastructure deficit. The next thing I want to talk to is item number 8.6, and I recognize that council is in between a rock and a hard place, and it goes back to the 2011 OCP, where council at the time painted themselves into a corner by producing an OCP, which not even 24 hours after the ink was dry on it, every piece of available land for development in the town centers was snapped up by carpetbaggers, speculators, and developers. And as a result of that, there was no land left to build affordable housing. Now, in 2011, the mayor, who was also the mayor in 2014, decided, well, we'll just not build any affordable housing, which is exactly what happened. Between 2011, 2014, going up to 2018, there was no affordable housing built, not even one unit, and not even, actually, unless I'm wrong, not even one rent unit built in the district of North Vancouver. So now you're between a rock and a hard place. If you go with the option that says, let's stick with the old OCP, that would be like, quite frankly, trying to beat a dead horse because it's such an abysmal failure. But then if you go with the new OCP, then you've got a problem, which is, well, you know, there's people that don't like it because it includes affordable housing. I've spoken or I've written to Lisa Murray on social media. She's fully against any form of affordable housing and absolutely against the tenant protection policy that would be found under that option. I don't know why she's against it, but she is. That's the problem that you face. Just a minute, I'm speaking. Now I'm going to close by saying that it's rather ironic, in fact, that we've got the color guard here tonight at the same time. At the same time, we've got one judge in BC deciding that all of the people that died so that we could own our land doesn't matter because it's going to be turned over to the Indians. Doesn't make sense to me. Thank you, Mayor Little. And I don't have anything more to say, and I'm not responding to any questions. I'm not responding to any questions, Councillor Murray. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Colbert. Councillor Murray, you were directly discussing there. Would you like to make a quick comment or response?
Well, I categorically deny anything that the person that just spoke said. I'm not against affordable housing. That's ridiculous. And obviously he's got some.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next speaker I have is Catherine Fagerlund. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Whoops. Hopefully I don't fall down trying to sit in the chair. Okay, just a minute. My printer and my internet are not working today, so I couldn't print anything off. Is anybody else having TELUS problems?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I heard that there was a problem. Anyway, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'd like to offer a few comments on item 8.6 on your agenda regarding OCP and zoning updates mandated by recent provincial legislation that is intended to address the housing crisis. First, the province very recently, October 9th, I think, issued Bill 25, which elaborates on implementation of Bill 44. I'm hoping that tonight's staff presentation will explain how that new bill impacts information to be introduced under item 8.6. I'm particularly concerned about two things in the more recent bill. Language that would encourage development in difficult and fragile terrain. DPAs are reasonably common in the district, as well as the proposed ability to relax guidelines relative to site coverage, height, and parking without consulting the neighborhood. Obviously, that change is hoping to create more housing faster. To that end, an article in the Globe and Mail this weekend suggested that consultation with residents is akin to NIMBYism, mentioning concerns about shadows, parking, character, renters, and the displacement of local raccoons. While there is a general and natural resistance to change, I'd suggest that the views of existing residents deserve respect. The livability of any neighborhood is at least in part owing to the time and money that has been invested by those existing residents. They likely have a good feel for initiatives that will erode the livability of their neighborhood. 2, Bill 44 requires the DNB to enact OCB, whoops, I'm going to run out of time. OCP updates and bylaw amendments to sorry, reading off a phone is not my natural way of doing things. The predicted 20-year housing needs, which according to the housing needs report means 20,000 new units, or that approximately. Bill 44 is not a mandate to build those housing units, only to make room for them. Recent history has shown that realization of the housing unit goal is hugely dependent on forces other than OCP planning and zoning, such as immigration, interest rates, construction industry capacity. So far, housing that is being delivered further to planning initiatives is missing the mark, definitely in terms of affordability for normal residents. I'd suggest that this This is predictable where the build out is driven by market and investment forces rather than by planning for livable communities. It's not clear what's to be done about accommodating infrastructure needs for the additional residents, but future livability will depend on anticipating those needs. Do the mandated housing increase in the OCP plan for schools and medical facilities? What about increases in transportation capacity? And I'll have to end there. But basically, I was going to say, please endorse option B. I think that's a better one. Thank you.
Very much. The next speaker I have is Colin Metcalf, joining us here in person. Welcome, and when you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Is it possible to get something put up? Which way it has to go? Do it backwards here. There we go, close enough. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Colin Metcalf, and I'm the president of the Pemberton Heights Community Association. We're here today because district planners and the provincial government are proposing changes to the OCP that will force neighborhoods like ours to upzone single-family neighborhoods into sites for multi-unit housing. This is shown in option A of the recommended staff options in one of tonight's agenda items, 8.6. I want staff to remember a number. That number is 0. On paper, they call small-scale multi-unit housing. In practice, what it really means is this: the malicious destruction of our long-established neighborhoods. Under this plan, a single-family lot that today holds one family home could soon hold up to 3-story sixplexes for 6 or more families. And once the land speculators arrive on our streets, our character and our community will be changed forever. This is not gentle densification. How much thought went into the effect this zoning change would have on our neighborhoods? 0. This will be the most harmful rezoning proposal ever seen on the North Shore, at the expense of families who chose Pemberton Heights for its stability, its livability, and its sense of community. There is 0 increase to additional schooling, 0 additional public transit, 0 increased policing or fire services, 0 infrastructure improvements whatsoever. 0, 0, 0, 0. And this will, and will this address the issue of affordability on the North Shore? Nope. Another 0. Our neighborhood is uniquely vulnerable. We have 1 road in and 1 road out. We have limited public transit and no plan from the province to improve it. Yet you want us to absorb hundreds of additional units in our neighborhood. It's shameful. Emergency access is already a concern, and adding dozens, even hundreds of additional units will put safety at risk. Forcing density onto neighborhoods without infrastructure is reckless, short-sighted, and irresponsible. Another 0. We're not opposed to growth, nor will we accept being called NIMBYs. We know North Vancouver and British Columbia must evolve, but growth must be thoughtful, balanced, and supported by transit, school, and other services. Forcing cookie-cutter densification onto single-family neighborhoods like ours, regardless of its unique circumstances, it's not planning. It's an attack on local homeowners and on the fabric of our very communities. We've already accommodated responsible density with the addition of coach house development, along with the addition of allowing more secondary suites. We will not stand by while bureaucrat planners and provincial politicians sacrifice our children's future under the guise of phony housing policy. I find it completely unacceptable that while your staff looked to seek feedback from residents, they made 0 attempt to connect with Norgate, Pemberton Heights, and the other proposed neighborhoods. Another 0. The DNV staff should be ashamed. Your planners and bureaucrats are basically rolling over and doing the work for the province by forcing this option onto taxpayers. This neighborhood has a voice, and we will use it. We will oppose this proposal at every step. We're going to protect Pemberton Heights, and we won't be silenced. Be aware that these decisions come with consequences. Say no to SMUHs and say no to option A, or we may be saying no to each of your re-election plans in October. And that would be a big fat 0 for each of you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome, and so we ask you not to cheer or boo or anything that might make someone else's comments feel unwelcome. Mr. Stewart, do you have a comment?
Your worship, I just wanted to make it very clear. The nexus of all the changes that we're facing have to do with the province and the province initiating them. It's really, in my opinion, unfair to say that the staff are just rolling over. They're not happy with this, just as many of the residents aren't. And so we're just trying to do what we can make the best we can out of a bad situation. The more recent changes that are being proposed by the province with Bill 25, if those are passed, and it's quite likely that they will be, actually hinders us even more in terms of the flexibility that we need to make sure that this is a kind of community that you're proud of and you're proud to live in.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Okay. The next speaker I have is David Cameron. Joining us here in person. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is David Cameron. I am a resident here in North Vancouver, have been for the last 10 years, and I too am commenting on the OCP updates. Not long ago, this council gave staff a mandate to think through a well-reasoned plan for growth in this district. Shortly thereafter, council then directed them to compare that plan to quote, Plan B, no change to the housing growth plan. And I find it telling today that staff still recommend option A. My questions for council today: who will pay for the increased utilities and connections in Plan B? Plan B will require around 11,000 units in disparate regions outside of growth centers based on the current zoning capacity inside growth centers. I understand putting sewer and water down to densified areas, and I can imagine it's much more costly going to the far reaches of this district. Is there an increase for funding for increased public amenities, parks, libraries, community centers, public transit in Plan B? I haven't seen one. Right now, this to me sounds like thousands of more residents sharing our already overcrowded libraries, schools, and daycare centers. And what about traffic? It's easy to look at a tower and blame it on traffic while you line up at a bridge. But one extra coach house on a hill puts more cars on the road than a townhouse or an apartment in a growth center. What about urban planning and mass transit? Plan A aligns with urban transportation goals. My question is, how will Plan B make a plan for increased mass transit? In conclusion, for me, it seems like an incredible waste of this council's time and staff's limited resources and expertise to have done all this work for a cost-effective and well-thought-out plan towards growth. And then in the end to say, no, thank you. We'll continue doing the same thing we did yesterday and expect better results in the next 5 and 10 years. Why have well-qualified staff, give them a mandate, and then ignore it all in the end? I did not see any changes or revisions or engagement with the public around making Plan A better. It was Plan A or no plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, we still have some time. Would anybody else like to address the council? Come on up, Mr. Chester. I could probably take 3 more speakers, if any, or 2 more speakers after Mr. Chester.
I won't be long.
Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Adrian Chester. I live on Crescent View Drive, just off Edgemont Village, and
I'm going to ask you to be nice and loud into the microphone.
and this is perhaps a little picayune compared to what people are talking about right now with the OCP. And I'll just say for my part that I think council and staff here are doing the best they can with a very, very difficult set of circumstances from the province. But specifically, I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but the liquor store move in Edgemont Village that is proposed to move from Connaught in the Grosvenor building to Columbus Food Market on the Edgemont and Queens. I was sad to hear about from Ms. Chua about some contract difficulties between Grosvenor, the landlord, and the liquor store, the tenant. But they are, I say with respect, nothing to do with council. Council should not consider the private legal affairs of those parties in considering whether this project should move. To my view, what the planner has said in the report to council is accurate. I was part of a big group of citizens who opposed the liquor store when it was first proposed in 2004. And we had a big march up Queens to council and said, you can't do it, you shouldn't do it. It was done, and all of our fears were not realized. The sky did not fall. The liquor store management turned out to be responsible. They've contributed well to the community, and they attract more traffic, which is good for the for Edgemont Village as a whole. It's good for the other merchants. It's good for the neighborhood. The move from where they are, which is kind of hidden away on Connaught, to the corner of the biggest intersection in the village, will attract more trade. It will help the village. If they continue to be as responsible as they have been, the fact that it's liquor is not going to be a problem in the community, but it will bring more traffic. And so I respectfully suggest that this is a good move. Council should approve it despite this unfortunate legal issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to address the meeting? If you're virtual, you're welcome to raise your hand. Yeah, Mr. Anderson up front here, and I can take one more speaker after that. Sure. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thanks very much. My name is Eric Anderson. I live at 2589 Derbyshire Way, and tonight I'm speaking for myself, not for any organization that I may belong to. Actually, it was Mr. Stewart's comments before that made me decide to make this presentation. I've sent this to council, but it was very late in the afternoon, so you may not all have received it. So tonight I'd like to refer to item 8.6 on tonight's agenda, the OCP update 2025. Of the two approaches offered, I would prefer option B, no change to existing housing growth plans. But this is really like choosing between the plague and cholera. Having spoken with several planners at the recent open house at Dorothy Linus, I must say that I'm more convinced than ever that the District of North Vancouver is not ready for the influx of new residents that could be the result of either of these two options. Neither of the options should happen after that any of the much needed infrastructure has been put in place. In other words, the provincial government's mandate to build without ensuring that hospitals and healthcare are ready for this large amount of new residents. The same goes for the schools and education in general. However, worst of all is that nothing indicates that the North Shore will be getting the much needed transportation infrastructure and improvements that are so badly needed, including to address the issue with the Second Narrows Bridge. Nothing about a light rail to North Vancouver, more sea buses, more regular buses, i.e. much needed and improved public transportation. The horrendous traffic situation that we all experience most of the time on the North Shore, unless you travel in the middle of the night, will not only continue, but worsen as the number of residents grow. If anybody doubts this, just watch or recall the recent town hall meeting held in Seymour. Let us not continue developments based on the provincial government's nonsensical regulations and mandate until the higher levels of government have not only promised, but also executed viable solutions to the traffic situation as well as other infrastructure needs on the North Shore. No improvement first should mean no sizable residential growth taking place. Thanks for your understanding.
Your comments, Mr. Anderson. Anybody else like to address the council? Yes, come on down. Welcome, Ms. Hughes, welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Heather Skuse. I live at 3399 Church Street. Didn't expect to be able to speak, so I'm not prepared, so I'm going to wing it. So I've agreed with a lot of the things that have been said already. I want to particularly mention, though, that as municipal council, we have, as voters, the most access to you. The way our government works is I have less access to my provincial counterpart that I may vote for or not vote for. So sadly, what happens is some of the responsibility lands for you to share our voices. I agree that of the options offered, they're not great. I would prefer that the plan that was put in place years ago is the one we stick to. If I have to choose, I'm picking option B, not because I think it's better, only because it's the least, it appears to be the least change. I'm currently living inland valley, not far from where the proposals are. This is where I've lived all my life. I spoke with my son, who is 26, and asked him if he wanted densification. He said, no. If I want to live in an apartment, I can go live downtown. He's not necessarily expecting to inherit the house that he lives in, but he still prefers North Van to be the way it is now. Maybe in 5 or 10 years, he'll change his mind, but at this point, he and his friends don't want it to change. So they are the people that I'm also listening to because frankly, I'm not going to be here forever. They're going to be the next people and they like North Van the way it is. We like our parks, we like our space. We like the fact that our streets where we know each other, those things are part of it. I will add, if we're going to keep densifying, we have to also bring in commercial stuff. Other than the Legion, which is a great place to go in Lynn Valley, we have some fairly limited options for going out. Lower Lonsdale, great spot. Not so much in Lynn Valley. So if we're going to keep adding people, we have to also add the commercial stuff. And the transportation on and off the North Shore absolutely has to be addressed first. Hospitals, schools, all of that stuff. And that's all provincial money. And unless they're going to step up with the money, sadly, you're elected to stand up and say no to the province on our behalf. Because frankly, they're going to push until you do. Thank you.
Very much. Okay, that completes the public input this evening. No, we have people here for items ahead of it as well. Okay. So council, I would like to propose a consent agenda. This is for items 8.1, 8.3, 8.8, and 8.9. 8.1 and 8.3 are up for adoption. 8.8 and 8.9 are our council meeting schedules, and I don't know how much debate there's going to be around that. Will someone second that as a consent agenda? Second by Councillor Back. Prepared to call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. So on a consent agenda, any member of council could have pulled one of those items out of the agenda for further discussion. In this case, all members of council consented to those 4 items being passed, so we can concentrate the rest of our time on the remaining items. That does leave item 8.2 as the next item to be discussed. It is also just up for adoption, which means there's no debate by the council, but I do recognize that when this matter was at second and third reading, it was not unanimously supported by the council, and so I will call I will seek a mover and a seconder on adoption. Moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Back. And I'm not going to seek any debate on the matter because it's at adoption. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried with Councillors Maw, Forbes, and Mayor Little opposed. Okay, next item up for discussion is item 8.4. This is bylaws 8739, 8738, 8740, and 8742, OCP amendment and rezoning for 520 to 540 Mountain Highway, 1505 to 1571 Fern Street, and 1514 to 1574 Hunter Street. This matter is being returned to us after a public hearing. So there's no staff report that I'm aware of on the matter. Is Mr. Milburn, did you want to add any comments? I think he's joined us virtually this evening.
Nothing to add, Your
Any
Worship.
clarifying comments, Mr. Milburn?
Nothing to add, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. And so I'll be moving the recommendation. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Second by Councillor Back. And just to council debate on the matter. I don't think there's, even though there is an OCP amendment on this particular project, I don't think that there's there wasn't certainly a lot of concern expressed in the public hearing from the community. This is generally in line with the neighboring properties, and I think some of the changes allow it to be a better space, including what I think is an attractive public outdoor space around this facility, and so I am supportive of this project. Councillor Back, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. I was not present for the public hearing, but I did review the video of that public hearing. And I want to support the staff recommendation here tonight that we move this, that it's given second and third reading. This is one of the more significant proposals in Lynn Creek, and I think it directly delivers on many of the priorities in our OCP: housing diversity, affordability, childcare, space for business, and transit-oriented growth. In terms of the housing itself, I think there's a true mix of both strata, market rental, below market rental, including 72 below market homes that'll be secured forever at 10% below median rents, as well as a few live workspaces. After the first reading of this proposal, the applicant went and listened to concerns that were raised, adding more 2 and 3 bedroom units. So responding to council and community concerns about housing for families. Mayor Little, you commented on the public realm piece to this, and to me, that's one of the more exciting aspects of it. This is really a key piece of the Lynn Creek Town Center, which I believe requires more thoughtful use of public space. This is going to feature a new plaza, widened sidewalks, cycling lanes, and as well as that segment of the green spine. As well, there will be, as I commented on, but the daycare space, a space for 49 new childcare spaces, which will be in a town center and an area of our community, like most areas, that certainly needs more childcare. A large restaurant corner, which I think will really bring the street to life. And I do want to acknowledge some of the concerns that were raised at the public hearing, and I think the applicant has done a good job to respond to some of those, including referencing the transportation studies, which show how the capacity and increased traffic in this area can be managed. So at this stage, I am happy to support the staff recommendation.
Thank you very much. Next speaker I have is Councillor Hanson, followed by Councillor Ma. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laird. Little. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Councillor Back, for your comments. I also will be voting in favor of this rezoning. Throughout my time on council, I have consistently voted in favor of rental housing. This proposal has more than 50% rental. And my voting in favor of this project is consistent with my pledge to the community to prioritize rental housing and to prioritize development in town centers. The project, as been mentioned, includes 72 affordable units at a 10%, at a rate 10% below district median rates. And while obviously all of us would have liked to see more affordable units at a deeper level, this will bring these 72 units plus 274 market rentals onto the market, which will provide an important and fulfill an important need in our community. The development, furthermore, is within a town center and serviced by transit, and the proposal has both a commercial and a childcare component that will enhance this developing town center and improve the livability of this neighborhood. Just dealing with some of the comments in opposition that I am fully respectful of, I do share the sentiment of those who have observed that the towers at 34 and 30 stories are too high. I would also have preferred smaller buildings. I also share the concerns of the traffic impact of 543 parking spaces in this location. However, I must weigh the overall benefits of the proposal to our community and how it aligns with the promises that I have made. Finally, I note, as was observed by Mayor Little, that of the 17 persons who spoke at the public hearing, only 2 speakers were opposed. I believe this project does have broad community support, and for these reasons, I will be voting in support of this rezoning.
Councillor Hanson, Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I'll keep this brief. I think this will be a great addition to the community. And I believe this is and I believe that generally there's support in the community for this. And this is going to tie into further discussion later tonight, 8.6. This to me is an example of thoughtful plan development. Yes, we still have some challenges with traffic. We'll always have problems with that on the North Shore, but this is concentrated in an area. There's community resources around there, and it's generally supported by the community. This is what we need more of, not development all over wherever people want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other speakers. I'll just make one other comment on it. Sorry, Councillor Murray, first time speaker, go ahead.
Oh, all right. Yeah, well, I hear my colleagues' comments, and thank you for that. And I know the idea of more rental housing is important to the community. Although we're sitting at a time right now where we've got a glut of housing in the region. Thousands of units in the region sitting empty. The vast majority of them are one-bedroom units because that was what was easy to market in 2010. We didn't put restrictions on rentals because we thought we needed more rentals. And by doing that, there were many, many people that decided to buy some of those market units and rent them out as short-term rentals. They became basically personal hoteliers. And the rise of the value of those units went up. When you could rent it for $450 a night, why would you rent it for $1,500 or $2,000 a month? Hence, the province's move to restrict short-term rentals unless you live in the space. So we always focus on housing. We've been focusing on housing for many years. We haven't focused on infrastructure. When I started a long, long time ago in this job, I was told, build it and they will come, Councillor Murray. They will come and build the infrastructure. There will be money. We will have support from senior levels of government to, widen that bridge and build those schools and fix that hospital. What's happened? Well, the bridge isn't fixed. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough nurses. We just actually had a team of doctors walk out from a hospital in the interior en masse. We're not building the schools. Surrey's kids are in portables. We don't have the infrastructure. They didn't come. They also told me, go up so we can protect the land base. Like the West End. If you walk through the neighborhood in the West End, I'll take my 2 minutes. If you walk through the neighborhood in the West End, one of the densest communities in this country, a community that I would love to live in, even though I oppose a lot of the density in this community. I want to live there because you can see through the neighborhood and you can stand on a street and you can see the water because the towers come from the bottom. When they said, Councillor Murray, protect the land base, we didn't protect the land base. We filled it with podiums. We filled it with commercial. We filled it with townhouses. So we've gone out and we've gone up and we haven't put the infrastructure we need. Now we are watching the economy, our communities being dictated to by a provincial government that is not interested in anything any of you or any of us have to say. They're going to come in and tell us that they are going to increase our community. The number of units we have to absorb is 22,000 today, and give them a couple of months and they'll probably add another 16,000 to that count. And they have no plan. We have had really not much of a plan either, other than to approve every development application that has come across this desk. I have not seen one defeated since I was elected in 1996. Maybe one, but it came back and it was actually denser. I don't know where we're going. Even when we have empty units, available empty rental units, we have to build more. It seems to be the only solution to anything that we're doing these days. We don't have discussions. We're in silos. We say that the community is supportive of these applications, and 10 people show up to a public hearing because no one's paying attention anymore, because they feel like it doesn't matter if they say anything, it's still going to happen. Dena has been a responsible developer in this community. You were the first developer in this community in Seylynn when we went from the concept of row houses to now towers. But I have to follow my gut and the OCP, which this council over the years, and I've been here since the beginning, not of council time, but of that OCP, we have not followed it. We have not protected older affordable rental. We've torn it down. We've not protected light industrial land. We've rezoned it to residential. We have not brought in the number of jobs we said we would under the OCP. Green space in the environment used to be at the top of the list in this municipality. We saved 1,000 acres in 1996. If that hadn't been saved, we would be seeing densification of up the side of Mount Seymour. This project is good. Richard White was a part of this application from the city of North Van, and I have always been impressed with Lower Lonsdale. He told me that the first thing they decided when they redeveloped Lower Lonsdale was to put a grocery store in, because that's what a community needs, a grocery store. We still don't have one in either Lionsgate or Seylynn. And I think we made some mistakes in that regard. I think your developments have worked well in the community. And I think this application, the center courtyard, and the fighting to change the commercial to allow a restaurant, an actual restaurant in that community, is something that I've been begging for years. But I've got another 600 potential cars coming to this community because of this application. I have lineups backing up into other municipalities. I have people screaming at us on a regular basis because they can't get over the bridge. And the only plan that we have is pay parking. We are not building enough parking. We think that rapid transit and transportation is going to come and get everybody out of their cars, and it's not happening. It's not going to happen for a long, long time because there's no money. Federally, provincially, municipally, we are out of money, and these things cost a lot. So I'm sure you're not surprised. But I can't support this right now because there's other things we need to do instead of building more. Thank you.
Just make some additional comments on it. There have been a number of projects that have been defeated by this council, including a 12-story tower in Maplewood, 16-story tower that didn't get to first reading up in Lynn Valley. We've had a number that have been profiled or sloped and had units removed off them. So the council has been selective, I would say, although there's no question it's a challenge being caught between provincial mandates and trying to be strategic about what we approve. I've long been supportive of densification between the bridges and below the highway. I think that's where you should put it, where you have infrastructure to properly support it, where you have a reasonable chance of being able to provide transit infrastructure to support the development in those spaces. And frankly, this is what the later debate this evening is kind of going to be about, which is whether we're abandoning town center planning or we support the principles of town center planning, where you get the critical mass for infrastructure, for transit, for all of the things that a community needs. And I just happen to think that in this neighborhood, not in every neighborhood, but in this neighborhood, it's a fit. And so I'm supportive here, so but I'm not supportive over here, right? We get to pick and choose and be strategic about it. And the council, countless developments, if you ask the development community, countless developments have been stalled because they don't think they could get through a public hearing in North Vancouver, or because frankly, the economics of the situation. And so I'd say this council has been selective and strategic, but all of the stuff that's been completed, we've largely found ways to work around it and deal with it. It is not the broader question of transportation infrastructure. Overwhelmingly, those lineups are people coming to the North Shore for work. There are people who are coming in the morning, lined up out into the Burnaby Lake stretch, coming onto the North Shore, and lined up leaving the North Shore in the afternoon, starting at 2:30 in the afternoon. It's workers coming and going. The residents actually contribute relatively little to the peak flows in the peak flow direction. We're largely counterflow. So I am supportive of this project, and I'm looking forward to our discussion a little later in the evening around that tension between town center planning and abandoning town center planning, in my humble opinion. Would anybody else like to comment on the matter? I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried with Councillor Murray opposed. Okay, council, moving on to item 8.5. Well, we have a presentation from staff, and I hope in your presentation you can address the concerns raised by the contractor. I think the short answer is the district doesn't have an obligation to abide by private agreements between tenants and landlords. We can set our decisions based on whatever we so choose, but I'll leave it to you to present.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, Member of Council, and Member of the Public. My name is Mina Sami. On behalf of the staff, I would like to do a brief presentation. The application proposes to rezone the site at 3012 Edgemont Boulevard to allow the operation of the Edgemont Liquor Store, Bylaw 8758. Two additional district-initiated amendments, Bylaw 8759 and 8760, are also proposed to remove liquor store use from other sites within Edgemont Village. My presentation is 7 slides long and approximately 5 minutes in length. Edgemont Liquor Store, also known as Edgemont Fine Wines, has been in Edgemont Village since 2004. The business was originally located at 3018 Edgemont Boulevard, shown in white on the map, and moved to its current location at 3246 Connaught Crescent, shown in orange, in 2020 when construction of Grosvenor Development finished. The current proposal involves relocating Edgemont Liquor Store from its current commercial retail unit to the ground floor CRU at 3012 Edgemont Boulevard, shown in red, located directly beside its original location. The proposed site at 3012 Edgemont Boulevard is Zone General Commercial Zone 1, C1. The relocation of Edgemont Liquor Store requires rezoning the subject site from C1 to C1L, General Commercial Zone 1L, to allow for the liquor store. As part of this application, two additional district-initiated zoning amendments are proposed as housekeeping matter to remove liquor store use from sites in Edgemont Village that no longer require it. Bylaw 8759 rezones 3040 to 3050 Edgemont Boulevard from C1L to C1, which does not permit liquor store. This site previously accommodated another wine shop in Edgemont Village. And Bylaw 8760 rezones site at 3210 to 3246 Connaught Crescent and 1055 Ridgewood Drive to amend the CD90 zone to exclude the liquor store use. These changes align with liquor and cannabis regulation branch requirements, which set a minimum of 1 kilometer distance between liquor stores, ensuring that only one liquor store operates within Edgemont Village. As part of the application process and in accordance with district non-statutory public consultation, a public notification to 640 nearby residents and businesses was distributed. The public notification area was defined as within 100 meters of the three rezoning sites. Two one-sided signs were also placed on the site at 3012 Edgemont Boulevard to notify the public of the upcoming proposed zoning changes. In addition to this public notification, a total of 108 letters were also sent separately to the owners and occupants of the staff-initiated rezoning sites. The letter outlined a staff-initiated discussion regarding the proposed zoning changes for these properties. Regarding the Edgemont Liquor Store relocation proposal, rezoning Bylaw 8758, a total of 10 responses were received. Of these, 8 were in support of the rezoning of the subject site, and 2 were neutral, requesting additional information. No opposition was received regarding the proposed liquor store relocation. Key reason for support included recognition of the Edgemont Liquor Store's longest-standing and responsible operation serving local residents, as well as the belief that relocating to 3012 Edgemont Boulevard would enhance visibility, attract more customers to the village, support neighboring businesses, and contribute to the overall vitality of the area. Regarding the staff-initiated rezoning for the other two sites, public feedback was generally neutral. However, two correspondents noted that retaining additional potential sites for a liquor store could encourage healthy competition, benefit the village, and keep the option open for another wine shop. Staff also received a response from a property owner's representative opposing the removal of liquor store use from CD90. Their concern was that these changes could impact the existing lease agreement, the intended future uses of the property, and its overall value. Staff responded back to these correspondence that the legal lease agreement is the private matter. All three zoning amendments are consistent with the OCP. Therefore, in accordance with the Local Government Act, a public hearing is not required. Given the supportive nature of these amendments, staff recommend not holding the public hearing and proceeding with first, second, and third readings of the bylaws following a statutory notification. Thank you for your time. This is the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, looking to you for a motion. Councillor Hanson, you're the first on the list. Would you have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Back, are you seconding? Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson, your comments.
Yeah, thank you very much to staff for the presentation. Thank you very much to the public who have expressed their support. I'm very pleased to support this bylaw amendment to relocate a liquor store, the Edgemont liquor store, to the corner of Edgemont and West Queens. I see absolutely no reason to oppose. 640 nearby residents were notified of the proposed bylaw amendments. 8 voice support, there was no opposition, and Adrian Chester came before us today and expressed his support, a community resident. So as stated, we cannot be influenced by private legal issues and issues pertaining to the lease arrangements. I would observe that this seems like a very expensive and time-consuming process to determine whether a liquor store should be moved a few blocks in an existing neighborhood. As we face increasing cost pressures, I think it would be nice if we found a way to simplify some of these procedures, allow staff to more easily approve this kind of change and save the taxpayer the expense of this type of process. That said, I am happy to support these bylaw amendments.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Back, your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I too am very supportive of the staff recommendation here. I agree with all of Councillor Hanson's comments, and I'm glad that Mr. Chester is here to give us a little bit of a history lesson from 20 years ago, because I actually remember the controversy that happened in Edgemont Village, and so I had to look it up, and there actually is an article online titled "Liquor Stores Pack Political Punch." And it described a very different time when 200 residents marched with "Books, Not Booze" signs protesting a proposed liquor store. We've come a long way. That debate was intense. So I'm glad to see that 20 years later, the community's matured. We now approach these uses with sound policy, good design, and evidence rather than fear, because as you mentioned, none of those fears have been realized. So I totally support this motion here tonight, this recommendation rather, and noting it is a relocation, it's not a new store, and actually provides vibrancy and supports the village. So I'm pleased to support.
Thank you. Just my own comments, actually a question to staff about this. Is it necessary to downzone, remove the zoning from the other property in the process? My understanding is that in the licensing process, they have a geographic protection that once a liquor store is in one location in the village, it would already naturally sanitize it from other locations within the village. And so I'm wondering, is it necessary to do the downzoning, which prohibits the current site from reaching a mutual agreement with their landlord, rather than making it non-compliant?
Can you hear me? Okay,
Now we
thank you. Through your worship, to respond to your question, any liquor store proposing to operate in the district has been required to undergo site-specific rezoning to include liquor store as a permitted use, therefore allowing council and community to be fully involved in the decision. In that case, if in the future LCRB removes the 1 kilometer requirements, then council and community has the option to just provide their feedback and comments.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm after, and maybe I'm probably looking for Mr. Milburn possibly on this, is by taking this position, we're doing something which I generally am supportive of, and I don't have a problem with it moving in the location. there's no question, we are to some degree putting ourselves into that private agreement situation and basically making the existing lease non-compliant to use on the space. Is there anything that compels us to downzone the previous property, even though we know the licensing system would only let one of these go forward in the future? Therefore, couldn't we have, as Councillor Hanson mentioned, more flexibility with where they can go and then have a reliance on the licensing system to make sure that there's only one in a particular 1 kilometer circle area?
Thank you, Your Worship. Happy to respond to the question. There is not a lawful obligation to downzone the location where they would be moving from. However, that would really have no difference in terms of the lease negotiations between private individuals. Whether or not they move, whether or not they comply with their lease is a separate conversation, which is between the two private entities. The key consideration for council is what is council's policy with respect to where these uses should be located. And historically and by convention, council has chosen site-specific indications. I would also note that the province has the tendency and ability to change its laws. And it could subsequently change the 1 kilometer rule. And in fact, the minister and actually his designate has authority to disregard that rule in certain circumstances. So the decision of council historically has been to make site-specific decisions with respect to liquor locations. If council wishes to have a broader conversation about having multiple sites where liquor could be located and reduce the number of site-specific rezonings, I would suggest that be part of the zoning bylaw update, which is ongoing, and that kind of option could be considered as part of the zoning bylaw update. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate it. The province will do what the province will do, as we're having the broader discussion tonight. And so whether they change the legislation or not, I don't know that our zoning is particularly going to play a limiting factor in their decisions. As we've seen, the erosion of land use, which used to be our raison d'etre as a municipality, is to make land use decisions as that's been interfered with. Just to be clear, we don't legally have to downzone the other property, but we definitely would have to legally upzone this property in order for them to be eligible to make the transaction. It's just staff have chosen to do that transaction simultaneously rather than leaving the zoning in place in the old one.
That's correct. That's correct. We're recommending that approach as it's consistent with council's past practice generally. However, again, if council wishes to wholly change the sort of policy approach to site-specific zoning for liquor, we recommend that not necessarily be part of this debate tonight, but be part of a future zoning bylaw review. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that. I do think that it's extra unnecessary work to some degree, as pointed out by Councillor Hanson, but it seems that it will be functionally fine under other scenarios. So I'll be supportive of the staff recommendation. Councillors Ma and Muri.
Just to follow up on that line of questioning, this 1 kilometer rule, if I can ask Mr. Milborn, is there another liquor store 1 kilometer away? And I believe we talked about this before. Where is that liquor store? Is it not in Westview?
That's more than 1 kilometer.
Your worship, I would refer that
to,
if I may refer that to staff who have been working on this file. Thank you.
In the city?
But why does that apply to us? Who cares?
To your worship, to Councillor Ma, there is an existing BC liquor store, Westview, at 2601 Westview Drive, approximately 850 meters from 3012 Edgemont Boulevard. However, the LCRB has reviewed the proposal and issued an approval in principle for the new location, recognizing that the effective travel distance between the site exceeds 1 kilometer due to the natural barrier.
I was just getting to the point. The provincial government has a lot of say over a lot of our policies. So they approved something in principle, but we still need to do this rezoning. Can you help me to understand that?
The approval in principle letter is the confirmation of eligibility for the store relocation. It allows the applicant to proceed with the local government process, ensuring compliance with relevant bylaws and applicable fire and health regulation, or to move forward with construction and or renovation of the proposed establishment.
Okay. And this is a comment. I know there's some representation here from the current landlord of the current liquor store. I don't believe we're inducing anything. My understanding of leasing is, with the landlord's consent, the current landlord or current tenant could assign their lease, could they not?
I don't know that we would have that information, but I think the more relevant question is, could they continue to be in non-compliance if they came to an agreement with the existing? So if we move the zoning, could they be non-compliant going forward on the old zoning? And I believe that's a yes. I'm seeing that from staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hearing from the community and actually going to the liquor store before it moved, I think it's a vibrant part of the community and there's community support. So I'm happy to support this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Miri?
I spent a lot of time on the other ones and not so much on this one because I thought it was kind of straightforward, but now I'm with Councillor Hanson. Who triggered this?
I'm assuming the applicant who holds a liquor license. Is that right? This is an application from the liquor license holder?
Yes, it is an application from the Edgemont liquor store businesses.
And that business wants to move.
Yes.
And we don't know why.
We don't make a judgment on why. That's a
I'm just
business decision
curious.
for them. Yeah.
I'm just curious. Okay, so they've made the application on this. Okay. But it's not because of any of the liquor control board's regulations or the distance between liquor stores. I was part of that books not wine battle. And I remember that, how times have changed. Okay, so the applicant wants to move. Okay, so we've moved it from one place, so this will be the third move. Okay, all right.
Yes, the Books Not Booze group, I think they were concerned that we were going to return to the bad old days of the Edgemont riot back in the day. If you have some time, that's a fun story to read up on. There actually was a riot in Edgemont back in the late 70s.
They're a bit more well-behaved in Edgemont now.
But Halloween's a coming. Yeah. So there you go. Okay, I see no further. Oh, Councillor Forbes, go ahead, please.
I just want to say that a few people that I spoke to in the community, they're looking forward to this. It's a more visible site. It's going to add some more vibrancy to the Edgemont Village, so I'm in favor of this.
Yeah, I will just make one last comment on it. That, on the question of waiving the public hearing, I don't think this will be a surprise to the community. This use or movement, it's way closer to the former location, and so I don't know that it's necessary for us to have a public hearing on this particular issue. So I'll be supporting the motion as it stands. I see no further speakers on the matter. I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. We do it for time. Yeah, okay. Which, sorry? No, don't do that. People may be recording it. You don't say the final score. So I do understand that we're probably gonna be in for a bit of a long haul on this next item. So I'm encouraging everybody to take the next 2 minutes to stand up, have a stretch. Sitting is the new smoking. Get a little bit of water. There's washrooms in the hall. We're gonna take a 3-minute recess and then we'll resume the agenda. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to reconvene the meeting. All right. We're gonna be moving on to the OCP update 2025 OCP bylaw amendments introduction. I know we have Sarah gonna open up with some comments, and I don't know, Mr. Milburn, if you'd like to make some comments, and then we've got Mr. Smith here as well. So Mr. Milburn.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, members of council, members of the public. I just wanted to make a couple of key context points, and then staff will elaborate on the discussion tonight with a thorough presentation. The province changed significant portions of the Local Government Act in late 2023 and early 2024. This required the district, as well as local governments across BC, to make changes to their official community plans by the end of this year. One of those key changes was to demonstrate in the official community plan that the district could accommodate 22,400 units approximately through official community plan designations and through zoning of the properties in the community. This was a calculus derived by the province without input from the district. It was based on the provincial government's assumed amount of demand. And just to give you an idea of context, the district's plan, current plan, calls for approximately a demand or recognizes a demand in the community for approximately 10,000 net new units between 2011 and 2031. That works out to about 500 units a year. Council decisions on average since 2011 have been consistent with that plan. On average, a little over 500 units a year have been approved by council. The provincial government's mandated increase in housing is over double that amount. It's a little over 1,100 units a year on average for 20 years between 2021 and 2041. The province also discussed the requirement for multiplex zoning, so what was sometimes referred to as small-scale multi-unit housing. And the provincial government, though, presented options to local government to also consider whether a house with a suite and a coach house was an acceptable way to satisfy the changes made in 2023 and 2024. In June of 2024, council chose to approve a house, suite, and coach house to be permitted on single-family lots within the district in the urban containment boundary. That decision was reflected based on input from the public and input from staff about the potential impacts in the community. The conversation tonight that we'll be presenting to you is to present two options, option A and option B. Key point I want to make about these options is that both generally reflect the official community plan intent to focus 75 to 90% of growth within the 4 key growth centers in the community. That will be mentioned by staff later in their presentation. And that either option should satisfy the Local Government Act, the current Local Government Act requirements in terms of meeting the local projected housing need as defined by the province. Now, I would like to note that after staff wrote the report, which is being considered tonight, the province introduced at first reading a new piece of legislation we refer to as Bill 25. That legislation essentially means, if it was to be approved, it means that a house, suite, and coach house no longer satisfies the requirement that the province has imposed for small-scale multi-unit housing. And therefore, the province is suggesting that all single-family lots within urban containment boundaries, excluding certain exemptions, such as existing protected heritage property and transit-oriented areas, unserviced lots, for example, all of them would have to, by June of 2026, accommodate typically either 4 or 6 units within the district. The same exemptions that I started to describe there in the Act would continue to apply. And the province has also given itself more powers to progressively enforce that mandate on local governments should they not follow through. So, having said that, it is staff's opinion based on this newly introduced legislation, which we anticipate, if adopted in the coming weeks by the province, would significantly change the ground under which we stand in terms of from a policy and regulatory perspective. Staff are now recommending that council consider and support option B, which is in their recommendation before you tonight. This will give the community time in which to respond to this changing landscape and to come back with further advice to council at a workshop or regular meeting so that council can debate the impacts of Bill 25. This will be a necessary conversation regardless of which option council may choose tonight, A or B. There will necessarily be a conversation if Bill 25 is approved to further discuss small-scale multi-unit housing in our existing single-family neighborhoods where a house, suite, and coach house is permitted. Happy to answer questions about that, but also would like to introduce staff. Seylynn Tay will be giving some introductory comments, along with Jason Smith, who will provide a presentation with your direction, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milburn. Ms. Tay?
Through Your Worship, the General Manager of Planning, Properties and Permits has provided quite an extensive summary of the housing context. But I would like to just add some additional context to the planning work that staff completed over the past year and a half that has led to this presentation. So this work involved, based on the direction of council, to be directing 75 to 90% of growth in our 4 key growth centers as the key urban structure of our work. We also undertook extensive engagement with the community in early spring, which led to the development of the refined land use scenario that is presented under option A. Option A prioritizes growth in the 4 key growth centers, Lionsgate, Marine Drive, Lynn Valley, Lynn Creek, and Maplewood, while also introducing moderate growth along the corridors and houseplexes in specific neighborhoods. Generally speaking, the planning and the technical work that went into this still remains sound, but in light of the changing landscape, the changing housing landscape, staff do support now option B so that we have more time to consider the implications of SMU and come back to council at some future date with an updated OCP that is a better reflection of our community's aspirations and what meets the needs of this community. And so with that, Your Worship, with your permission, I will turn the floor over to Jason Smith, our Senior Community Planner, to deliver the staff presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tay. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Ms. Tay and Mr. Milburn, for those contextual comments that I think are quite relevant to the discussion we're going to have tonight. As was mentioned, my name is Jason Smith. I'm a Senior Community Planner, and I'm happy to present a brief overview of some of the bylaw amendments and options here before you tonight. As Mr. Milburn mentioned, there were significant changes to the Local Government Act in late 2023 and early 2024. And some of those changes is what is driving this OCP update, namely the need to accommodate within our OCP and zoning bylaws our 20-year housing need. And this needs to be completed by the end of this year. This project began in July of 2024, where Council endorsed the scope of the OCP update, which was primarily focused on accommodating that 20-year housing need and utilizing the existing urban vision within the current OCP. That is, as Mr. Milburn mentioned, concentrating 75 to 90% of growth within our 4 key growth centers. And as a reminder, those 4 key growth centers are Lynn Valley, Lionsgate, Lynn Creek, and Maplewood. Council then also received the housing needs report with that 22,400 unit housing need as prescribed by the province in October of last year. Staff then took that number and developed 3 scenarios, which were presented to council for public engagement in February of this year. And throughout the spring of this year, we engaged on those 3 scenarios. Those scenarios came back, as Ms. Tay mentioned, in June as the refined scenario, which then now forms option A. At that time, council also directed staff to develop an option that looked to utilize the existing land use plan and to see what changes could be made with the existing plan to just meet the necessary need to accommodate our house need. And that led to the development of option B. We did consult on those two options with the public in the fall of this year, and that brings us here to the decision point tonight. So as mentioned, option A does introduce a series of land use changes and land use and increases in density in the OCP. It expands some of the existing centers, and I'll go into a bit more detail around what those changes are. And it primary the driver for this was to, one, accommodate the housing 20-year housing need, but to increase housing choice, increase housing diversity in the community. And this was based on some of the feedback we heard and the technical analysis that we heard in the spring. Option B maintains our current land use designations and does not propose any further changes to those at this time. It will utilize the existing rezoning process and development process to accommodate growth, and such as the decisions earlier tonight, also consider on a case-by-case basis OCP amendments as well. And that would be continuing our model that we have utilized since the adoption of the current OCP in 2011. So just to be clear, again, as Mr. Pillmore mentioned, both options do accommodate our 20-year housing needs. Staff have done the necessary analysis based on the guidelines provided by the province, and both options do accommodate our 20-year housing need in both the OCP and zoning bylaws. And that housing need, because it's based from 2021 to 2041, does include what has been built over the last 4 years. So roughly the net housing need that we do need to accommodate is roughly 20,000 units, and both options do satisfy that with the amendments presented tonight. I'll just take a few minutes here to go through some of the changes that you'll see in option A. And option B, again, as I mentioned, has no changes to the land use designation. So on your right, you'll see option B. That is the current OCP map and with all the corresponding land use designations. And then option A, that is the whole district with the changes being proposed. And next few slides, I'll go kind of drill in to some of the changes. For the majority of land use designations under option A, there are no changes. The changes are predominantly focused in and around our 4 key growth centers. Again, kind of building on that vision within the current OCP. There are some changes being proposed outside the 4 key growth centers under option A only. And these decisions, again, and what fed into option A was before what happened in the last couple of weeks with Bill 25. So we did explore in scenario 3 that was presented in February, and in the refined scenario, the notion of introducing house plexes or 4 units on a single family lot in certain neighborhoods that you can see here on the map. In addition, there was some exploration of expanding some townhouse designations along East 29th and West Queens as well. And just taking a closer look at some of our centers. So again, what you have here is option B on the right, no land use changes. That reflects the current OCP land use designations as they exist today. So you'll see in option B, the kind of quite tight boundary around Capilano and Marine, which is the current Lionsgate Town Center. And under option A, there's a proposed expansion of that to reflect some of the ongoing conversations around increased transit investment along the main marine corridor and having some increased densities along in that area to support that future transit investment. So you'll see here some of the areas where we were proposing under option A to increase residential densities. You'll note some of the existing single family designations within the existing Lionsgate Town Center are being proposed to move to Res 4, which would accommodate 4-story apartment buildings and or townhouses. Further to the west, along the Marine Drive corridor, is the proposed under option A to expand some of the into some of the single family neighborhoods along Marine Drive with 6-story apartment residential designations and a slight increase along Capilano to reflect an increased density for mixed use. Moving to Lynn Valley, again, on the right, you'll see the existing land use options, designations under option B. and then what is being proposed being changed under option A. So a slight expansion of the Lynn Valley Town Center boundary to capture Karen Magnuson and the neighboring park, and also some slight increases to some of the residential densities that you see there that anticipate apartments and townhouses, and a slight increase in residential densities there to 4-story apartment designations. Moving along the Lynn Valley corridor, again, slight increases to residential densities along that corridor, and a little bump up in is being proposed for mixed uses along some of those primary fronting areas along Lynn Valley Road. And similarly, again, along Mountain Highway, as you can see here, some proposals to increase some of the from 4-story apartments to slightly increased mixed use and 6-story apartment designations. Lynn Creek, as you can see here in option B, and under option A is no expansion of the town center boundaries. It's quite a constrained town center with the city of North Vancouver and the highway predominantly setting the boundaries for that town center. Within the core area near Phibbs Exchange, one of the more significant transit locations today on the North Shore, we are proposing some increases in both the mixed use designations along the Mountain Highway and Main Street corridor to kind of support and continue the growth that we've seen there. And then similarly, an increase in residential density from predominantly 4-story apartment to 6-story apartment residential designations in that core area. Similarly, we are proposing to increase from envisioned under the current OCP for up to 4-story apartments in that pocket along East Keith, and up designating that to a Res 6 designation, which again would deliver typically 6-story apartment buildings. Moving to our last town center, or village center in this case, is Maplewood. Again, similar to Lynn Creek, there are no real viable options to expand the center boundaries here. So Maplewood saw minor changes being proposed to some of the residential designations. As you can see, kind of on the north end there, moving from a townhouse designation to a 6-story residential designation, and then more in the core, a slightly denser 6-story residential designation. Under option A, again, trying to build on the direction from the province to build housing more faster with some consideration for pre-zoning. And so this would only again be under option A if council chose to move forward with that. Staff would return shortly in the new year with zoning to support some of the land use designation changes being proposed under option A. The analysis that staff took in terms of identifying sites that would be eligible for pre-zoning took into consideration a comprehensive list of criteria, and those details are all outlined in attachment 6. But the main drivers for this was to protect purpose-built rental sites, protect heritage sites, and also to protect future transportation needs. So there was a conscious decision, and that's why you'll see very few sites in our 4 key growth centers being recommended for pre-zoning, because we wanted to preserve council decision-making for those on a site-by-site basis in order to secure critical infrastructure needs, particularly focused around transit. That being said, as you can see here in blue, the bulk of the sites would be in those neighborhoods where under option A, it's proposed to consider some houseplex designations. So both options are going to have tremendous infrastructure implications. We've had lots of comments earlier today around some of the infrastructure challenges and concerns that people have expressed throughout this. Staff are certainly aware of those and are being transparent around the reality that there will be significant demands under either option for infrastructure investment, and that there will be need updates to both our infrastructure and financial plans to accommodate that. And it goes without saying that there will need to be significant investment from senior levels of government to support growth under any of these options. Both options will require amendments to the OCP in order to comply with the legislation and the requirements of the province to accommodate our 20-year housing need. And so within the OCP itself, there are a series of what we're kind of calling policy adjustments to address the 2024 housing need. So this is bringing and identifying that, yes, our housing need is 22,369 units. And there are some language around certain populations that we need to make sure that we're doing our best to accommodate within the OCP. So there's language to support that as required. And additionally, some of the changes that the province introduced did enable new authorities, such as inclusionary zoning, the ability to require affordable housing in zoning. So there's language being proposed in both options to enable, at a future date, should council choose, to enable some of those new authorities. Under both options, again, there is an updated regional context statement, a separate legislative requirement that we need to meet to address the somewhat recently adopted regional growth strategy. So every municipality is required to have a regional context statement that basically shows the linkages and how the a municipality's OCP aligns with the regional growth strategy. So there is a new regional context statement that we're required to submit to Metro Vancouver for acceptance. That is part of both options. And finally, there's this, we haven't had a kind of a holistic review in some time of the OCP that was adopted in 2011. So there are a few housekeeping amendments that are also being proposed under either option, updating some of the language in terms of how we refer to local First Nations, and also in the maps at a minimum, identifying what is now called Lower Capilano as the more commonly used name of Lionsgate. So there's a few changes that are really housekeeping in nature that are involved in both options. There is also, under both options, residential tenant relocation assistance bylaw. And so this takes our existing tenant relocation and assistance policy and translates it into a bylaw. And this is, again, utilizing a new power that was given to municipalities by the province and gives us a bit more clarity around how we utilize this bylaw in more circumstances. And there were a few minimal changes, but the intent in drafting that bylaw was to translate the policy as it exists today as close as possible into the new bylaw. But there was a few minor changes that would need to be made, and those are identified there. As has been mentioned earlier, Bill 25 has really shifted some of the ground under which we based our development of the options for tonight. So as has been mentioned by both Mr. Milburn and Ms. Tay, staff are acknowledging that that has potential implications, and we simply have not had the time to fully assess what that is. And should that legislation be adopted, council would provide additional analysis based on what the implications are when we've had some more time to kind of see, one, specifically what they are, and have had some time to analyze that. So as has been mentioned, that has led to a change in terms of staff's recommendation on the best option at this time to move forward with. And staff's recommendation would be to move with option B, not proceed with any changes to land use designations. So as I was mentioned, we are under a tight time frame here. We need to have our OCP amended in order to comply with the province's requirements by the end of this year. And we've worked closely with other departments to develop a timeline on where we go, but we do need a decision from council if we are going to meet our deadlines tonight on which option to proceed with in order to have a public hearing likely on November 12th, and then further readings and finally adoption on the remaining 2 meetings after that time in order to meet our timeline. So want to be very clear that we do need some direction if we are going to meet our end of year deadline tonight. And as mentioned, option B is here before you because it is different than what's in the staff report. I thought it would be helpful for council to see it from here. And it is quite a lengthy recommendation, but what it is doing, it is giving first reading to an official community plan bylaw amendment that would enact option B. So introducing that language in the RCS and some of those housekeeping amendments, but no changes to land use designations. It would also, the recommendation would be to give first reading to the tenant relocations assistant bylaw, to acknowledge our local government requirements around consultation that we've done. A lot of consultation, don't require any further consultation at this point. And similar, the consideration of the financial plan, and waste management plans, and that the OCP bylaw be referred to a public hearing. And that if the OCP amendment is given first reading, that we submit our regional context statement to Metro Vancouver for consideration and acceptance. With that, I've finished my presentation and staff are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Okay, Council, I'm going to move option B. Is there a seconder for option B? Seconded by Councillor Murray. 6 minutes, huh? Address this issue. No, I think that this is the introduction. We have lots of opportunities still to come for comments on the OCP. So I think we should stick to it for now, and then there will be plenty of opportunities to comment as this process unfolds. Initially when bills 44, 46, and 47 were implemented, we had just come off the discussion about the housing needs report, and the province came along and said you must produce and complete a certain number of units in your community. And then bill 44 was introduced in 46 and 47, and it said quite dramatic targets and changes for the community in terms of building capacity into the OCP, removing public input and hearings, moving the zoning up to the OCP. It was a very massive change in land use in our province. And I was obviously not comfortable with it. And I went to the minister at the time, it was Ravi Kalan, and I said, look, if you wanted us to produce more housing and you'd come to us and said, look, we're going to double the completion rate, I would have stamped my feet and said, get out of municipal affairs, leave us alone. But at the end of the day, those units would have been planned in the community. We would have put them where transit is. We would have put them where we got the critical mass to improve transit. We would have put them where we have the infrastructure in the ground, where we have close access to transit and transportation services. We would have put it where we don't have flood hazard problems or other things. And I guess this is really the core of the issue. Over the last several decades, the planning community writ large has been telling municipalities, we need you to build compact redevelopment in town centers. That's how you're going to achieve your objectives. That's how we're going to get a variety of housing forms and tenure and mix of units for your communities to be able to grow going forward. And we had bought into that, and we produced the OCP, we created the town centers, and we had been supporting it by producing units in and around the town centers in our community in order to be able to achieve variety of housing type and form and everything. For a community that had been largely single family for generations before that point. So we bought in, and we had the support of the planning community for what we were doing. And then the province comes along with bill 44, 46, 47 and says, units everywhere. Planning is thrown out the window. It's now just units in every zone. If it was medium, it's now high. If it was high, it's now super high. And if it was low in community form, neighborhood form, that's going to get dramatically changed too. Now, I have no misgivings about what's going to actually happen. The market is going to drive the actual implementation of this. But it's that asynchronous aspect of it that you're going to have a little cul-de-sac, and all of a sudden one home is going to change to a fourplex or a sixplex while the other ones are still bungalows for a long period of time. Instead, I think that the best place to put SMU, the small multi-unit housing spaces, is in transitional zones around the town centers space. And so to that end, I actually give recognition to the staff for producing option A. There's a lot of good stuff in option A. I like the Res 6 on Keith. I think that we do need to contemplate changes down in Norgate, but we should do that with a local planning initiative, meeting with the neighbors, talking about the impact, and putting forward a list of what we expect to achieve in the community through an effective local planning process. At this OCP level, it is just too hard to be able to communicate what the impacts are going to be in a particular neighborhood. I'm going to just carry on with my comments, and on that I've got 2 more minutes. To that end, we don't have the transit infrastructure in our community to support development throughout the neighborhood. We have it along corridors quite often because of our topography, the rivers and creeks. We only have a few key spots where you can go east and west in our community. And so it makes a lot of sense to focus our density and development in those areas where we can support it with efficient transit and transportation. It doesn't make sense to put it at the top of a neighborhood that is car-centric without reaching the critical mass for transit. And so those areas are just going to produce more car trips. That doesn't make sense. Bill 25 is a big problem because we had looked at Bill 44 in the original scope, and we'd said, look, if we go from a primary and a secondary, and largely the District of North Vancouver has had secondary suites implemented since the 90s in some form. If we go from primary and secondary to coach house, we can actually comply with the initial Bill 44, and it allows us to still have generally single family neighborhoods, generally focus our development in town center spaces. And then we met with the minister. We got a letter from them saying that we were in compliance and we were meeting the new legislation. And then Bill 25 gets introduced and it says, yeah, actually, we're going to change all of that. And I guess my last sort of comment is, it seems like it's an intentional effort to create chaos in planning and housing development in our community. And what it's resulted in so far is 3,500 completed and unsold units. The number of units that have been produced in the studio and one level have put the whole calculus out of whack, because now you can't get a development to go forward to achieve those 2s and 3s and 4s because the math doesn't make sense without the 1s and studios. There's 3,500 of them sitting complete and unfilled in the community. And so the project is now not going to go forward and offer that thing that is so in demand and need in our community. So I'm very frustrated with the situation. I think option B gives us the best opportunity for us to have a longer conversation and figure out how we're going to implement this locally. And ultimately, I ask everybody to call your MLA and apply pressure to them to hold back on Bill 25 and review the impacts of Bill 44. And if you'd like to talk about it further, you're welcome to contact my office. I'm more than happy to talk to you about that issue. Next, I have the seconder, Councillor Murray.
We did ask earlier if we could ask questions, and you said you would entertain that prior to our comments, so I came with questions.
You're correct. I did say that earlier. So if staff has questions of council, and I'm going to be pretty strict on it, that's not. Council has questions of staff. You guys are always welcome to ask us questions. Then I'm going to be pretty strict on it. It's not just an extension of your arguments time. It is if you have clarifying questions to clear up things from staff. Keeping in mind, we're at the beginning of a multi-stage process here. There will be plenty of opportunity to ask questions. But again, I don't want you to have to proceed if you feel you have a question you must have. So Councillor Murray, Councillor Pope, Councillor Hanson, if you have clarifying questions first, and then we'll get onto the motion that's on the floor.
So once the zoning's put in place, if this legislation continues going forward and zoning is put in place for change on single family properties or areas that have multiple family opportunities, once the zoning is put in place, is there an opportunity to reverse and go back to the status quo, which is our existing OCP? What are the impacts of that?
Mr. Smith.
I think that is what we as staff are looking for, more time to come back with a more fulsome response in terms of what those impacts are. So we have done some work in the lead up to council's decision of June 2024, but we would like to kind of reassess what those implications are and bring that back in a more fulsome report and with a fully thought out report and presentation to kind of best give all those detailed answers to council in order to enable a better decision on how best to move forward. Given that this was the legislation was only introduced last week, we simply have not had the time to kind of bring together those implications with regard to implementing SHMU. That is something we're working diligently to deliver as soon as possible to council, but we don't have that level of detail tonight for you.
Okay, so my, why,
Just to clarify, so we don't normally have a question and answer period before. We have the council members have 6 minutes to incorporate both their arguments and their questions. I did get a special request today to open it up a little bit and provide an opportunity to ask clarifying questions, but it's not a wide open, you can ask any question you want to. We'd be here all night. We'd be able to rag the puck. That's not the intent. I am trying to apply a little pressure so you're asking your most important questions. So you have 4 minutes to ask questions if you'd like to ask questions.
oh, and then I can have another 4 minutes plus 2 to make my comments?
On the arguments, yes, that's fair.
Oh, okay, thank you. Then you can turn on my clock.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason I ask you that question is because when we rezoned Cove and Mountain Forest 30 years ago to park, from urban reserve to park, the next governments, I think it was under Christy Clark, the Liberals came in and made a change to zoning that would have prevented us from rezoning that land because we would have had to make up the difference in value. In 96, we were able to rezone, the land was rezoned, and that was it. It was considered down zoning. Today, it's considered a blessing that we did it. My concern is that if we zone and we try to go back after this legislation is torn apart by another government that replaces the current one, could we do that without incurring the cost between an up zone and returning to a down zone? So that's my question. And I know you can't answer it right now, but I want to understand that, because if that is the case, this is, I mean, this is, that's my question.
May I suggest, because it is ostensibly a political question at one point, it would be up to that incoming government to equip you to do that. If the provincial government came in and said, we're scrapping all of this, and by the way, we're authorizing you to return to your old levels, then that would protect the municipality in those cases of loss of value.
Do we have any financials on what this increase in density will cost in regards to pipes in the ground, infrastructure, the increase with the volume of water utility pipes that would need to be replaced beyond the existing work that we've already done in the lead up to what our OCP directed? Mr. Cohen?
Yes, so through the mayor, as it's outlined in previous staff presentations, there has been insufficient time to conduct that type of assessment. So we do not have that information.
And how long would you be looking at to assess this kind of increase, and certainly with this recent announcement of Bill 25?
Yeah, through the mayor, the priority for staff is to understand what we would be modeling. With the shifting sands, it's quite challenging for us to know what that is at this time. But as previous OCP processes have done, this is usually a multi-year process. We have that iteration between infrastructure and planning. That has not been the case through this. That's the reason why the planning team has set deadlines and the engineering team doesn't have the information to support some of that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Pope, did you have questions on the matter?
Yes, I do.
Yep.
So until tonight, I think it was the general understanding that option B essentially excluded multiplexes. I think that's what we heard from a lot of people here. So if the government, as we've just heard, goes ahead and passes this new legislation requiring multiplexes to be everywhere, then wouldn't that mean that we're even with option B, we're still going to have multiplexes that we have to consider in our?
That is correct, yes. As kind of, we will present further details, but yes, if Bill 25 were to be implemented and adopted, it would likely, regardless of which option you choose tonight, we would need to respond to that legislation and the requirements of it. So yes, there is, we'll come back with the full details of the extent of what the legislation and implications are. But on a top level, yes, if you went forward with option B, we would still be required to implement SHMU under the deadlines proposed in Bill 25.
Thank you for that clarification. It's significant because I think, a lot of people in this room and people who've written to us say, we hate both options, but we like B more because it doesn't include SMU. So given that, and I have mentioned this to you, I would like to propose an amendment that removes any discussion in option A or option B, removes multiplexes from our vote and our decision tonight.
I want to clarify that before I seek a seconder on it. So just want to be clear. So option B, which is the one that's on the floor, doesn't include the multiplex already. And so the motion that's on the floor already does what you're saying that you want to do. Neither of the options can stop the government from implementing a future change if they implement Bill 25. So I just want to be clear about the amendment because it sounds like the amendment is of no enforce and effect to the current motion that's on the floor.
So the problem is, as always, that this has just been dropped on us and now it's being injected into our discussion tonight at the last minute on the fly. Where, I and other counselors have walked into this meeting tonight thinking that this is very clearly option A, this is clearly option B, except it's not anymore. It's not because the whole discussion around SMU is going to change. And because of that, it seems inappropriate to me to have a discussion that includes SMU tonight. It should not be part of our discussion. It should be removed from option A, and then it's fair. Then we have a level playing field of discussion about what we're talking about, increasing density, evenly distributed, or keeping it in centralized town centers. But the SMU, you said in your report, we don't even know what the implications are of this Bill 25 that's just come out and
appreciate the clarification on it. I think I understand what you're saying on it, and I just want to be clear with the motion that's on the table right now, which is option B. There is no mention of multiplex or implementation of SMU in it, but I think it's fair and reasonable to say if people are considering A versus B, that the multiplex issue is going to be probably determined by the provincial government at a future time anyway, and probably shouldn't be the entire basis for your decision on A or B. If that's fair, I'm just trying to say in function, your amendment is to remove something that's not in the motion on the floor.
And the problem here,
we don't amend a motion that's not on the floor.
The problem is this is just being thrown at us. Sure. Right? And it's not fair to ask us to consider the OCP option A or option B when there's been and will potentially be an enormous change to a piece of that overall legislation and this overall policy that we're voting on.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the amendment that you want us to consider.
Oh, well, I've sent it to.
Yeah, but the amendment is to remove language that isn't in the option that's on the floor. It's to remove it from an option that we haven't put on the floor. And I guess my problem is that's not in order.
But the option you're putting on the floor is in the context of option A as well. It's option A or option B, and you're saying I'm moving option B. Correct. But you're moving option B in the context of option A being one of the options.
I hear what you're saying, and so to the room, you're more than welcome to consider A or B with or without SMU because the provincial government is going to implement Bill 25 or not implement Bill 25. I have no in order way to amend an option that's not on the table, so I'm going to rule it out of order as an amendment. So unless you have a different amendment, one that actually is in order to the motion that's on the floor. Otherwise, I'm going to move along. Do you have any questions about? Okay. Okay. Next, I have Councillor Hanson. Do you have any clarifying questions on the report?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Murray, you're next on the list. Is this? But you've already done questions.
Yeah, we have a question.
Anybody else with just clarifying questions before we go into formal arguments? Okay, into formal arguments. Councillor Muir, you were the seconder. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Little. This provincial legislation in bills 44, 46, and 47 is some of the most egregious directives that I and this community has seen certainly in my 30 years in local government. The dictatorial approach from the provincial NDP is beyond any former government moves in the history of this province. Councils in this province had no idea what was coming in regards to this legislation. We were in the dark about the fundamental changes coming to the role of local government and what it has played for decades. The government even went to the extent during the legislation of selecting staff members from municipalities in the province and throughout the region, requiring them to sign non-disclosure agreements so they could understand what was going on, but they could not share it with the elected officials at this table. What kind of community are we living in when the provincial government is restricting discussion, consensus, and disrespecting the years of planning by our staff, elected officials, and our community and taxpayers? This is a plan with no plan. There are no financials, there are no impact assessments, there is no funding from senior levels of government to accommodate the densification of sprawl and increased density beyond our capacity to support it. Development cost charges is what pays for the sidewalks and the lights and the pipes and all of the stuff we need to support those town centers and development in our community. And the federal government and provincial government is slashing them by 50%. Hi. I'll listen to you when you speak. I'd appreciate the same respect.
Councillor,
Thank you.
carry on with your comments, please.
Voiding our ability by the feds in the province, voiding our ability to pay for the infrastructure as the economy continues to teeter, faced with tariffs prompted by our once close neighbors to the south. Where is the infrastructure, the transportation, the schools, doctors, nurses, teachers, and hospitals? We are struggling already, and this government is requiring us alone to absorb thousands over the 22,000 that we thought we were going to have to absorb a couple of weeks ago, given the newly announced Bill 25. The regional utility, Metro Vancouver, was never consulted prior to the consultation of this legislation. Affecting projects that are not necessarily based on growth. The sewage treatment plant on the North Shore is based on an environmental lawsuit and putting primary treated sewage into the receiving waters. That is why we're replacing it. This is driven purely by politics. This will activate significant speculation and rise the assessments even more. This government is bankrupting our province, sinking us lower into debt, and occupying a lane they know nothing about. This is the most serious change. I've lost my place, to a municipality's role ever in this process. At this level of government, at this table, you can give us your thoughts, you can share your opinions, you can take part in the process. We want to hear from you, but the province is not interested. We have thousands of units that will sit empty, including those under construction right now. I'm almost done. Yet with the recently introduced Bill 25, they are tone deaf to the seriousness with the move they have made and are making. It is not one size fits all. We are all unique, and the thought that densify sprawl and build more and the price will come down is somehow a solution to our problem is ignorant, naive, and an appalling level of disrespect and irresponsibility. The concerns from professionals, industry, taxpayers, and local elected officials is significant. With growing financial concerns, lack of resources, and taxes that will rise and rival our cost of living. If you think utility costs are high now, wait, because the federal government sees us as paying the lowest property taxes in this country, because we do. But our cost of living is one of the highest in the world. We have to write this. We need our community to rise up to prevent this government from forever changing the landscape of our community. This move, again, is purely driven by politics, a government that doesn't care about democracy or community, and a thought that the late Premier John Horgan would be horrified by. Thank you.
Councillor Murray. Councillor Hanson, you up? Was that from the previous discussion or you're wanting to speak? Go for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you to staff for their comments, Mayor Little and councillors who have expressed their views. I'd like to start by expressing my personal opposition to the density mandates, the one size fits all growth strategy, which is not supported by appropriate infrastructure planning and infrastructure investment. Bill 44 mandates that we have zoning in place for 22,369 units over the time frame 2021 to 2024. Since 2021, we have net 2,612 units. That leaves 19,757 units by the end of 2041, 16 years. That is double our current rate of growth. At a time when the primary concern of our community is lack of transportation and other infrastructure, we are now forced to sit here and turn our minds to where to locate nearly 20,000 additional residents over the next 16 years without being given any concept of a plan for infrastructure. I believe this is bad policy, and I believe this is bad for our community. With all due respect to the provincial government, this policy will not achieve the desired purpose of improving housing affordability. The policy will not benefit the residents of the district. The beneficiaries of this policy will be some builders, some developers, some local landowners whose properties will increase in value with the increase in zoning capacity. The losers, meanwhile, will be the district residents and taxpayers who will face higher taxes necessary to pay for the civic infrastructure needed to support this growth, will face worse congestion, the inevitable result of the increased population, and face, indeed, likely higher housing costs as we trade expensive new housing for the existing and more affordable housing. At a time when what is required is a serious discussion as to how we are going to fund the necessary investments in transportation and other infrastructure, and necessary investments in affordable housing, we're instead, as I say, forced to sit here and contemplate where we're going to put 20,000, I say, fictional units, because there's no way those units could be built with the infrastructure that's currently in place. I would invite anyone who's interested, go to the emergency ward, Lionsgate Hospital, ask yourself how that's going to fare up with a doubling of our population. To me, of course, as I reflect on the actions of the provincial government, this is disappointing. However, it is not my task to vote on these density mandates. That's not the office that I was elected to. My job is to respond to the provincial government's mandates and choose the best option as to where to place 20,000 new housing units over 16 years should such imaginary growth ever come to pass. In my view, in restricting myself to option A and option B, I take a different view to Mayor Little and Councillor Muir. I think option A is indeed the better choice. Option A, in my view, identifies areas where growth can be better accommodated and focuses growth in those areas. As stated in the staff report, option A, I'm quoting now, prioritizing housing growth near transit amenities in growth centers and in corridors. And meanwhile, option B puts this, I say theoretical growth because it's not realistic, but it would be spread out away from growth centers in a way that in the end, I view, would impose greater challenges to our community and costs. So in my view, if we're actually talking about where to put this growth, which is, as I've said, what I think of that discussion, it should be option A. However, I will conclude where I begin. The whole strategy of mandating growth at this level in our community in this way is poor public policy that does not benefit our community. This whole process is a distraction, I believe, from much needed discussions about how we're going to fund transportation and other infrastructure and much needed affordable housing. I hope that in the future, there will be a provincial government that will turn its mind to the real issues and real needs of our community and will seek us out as a partner to work with them to find meaningful and lasting solutions. And for my part, I vouch to do what I can to seek the coming into place of that government. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hanson.
Clarify, option B is the existing OCP.
It's the official land use, but I think the important point that distinguishes them is that the latent density in the single family houses is fully counted. And so basically when the district allowed secondary suites and coach houses, that created a whole bunch of latent unused density in the single family neighborhoods, I think 17,000 units in total. And so we're using those 17,000 units to deduct it from the 20,000 remaining. And therefore we have a much more modest number of units that we have to accommodate in town centers, but it recognizes the latent density in the single family neighborhoods, which and that's the key difference. The other one accommodates several thousand more, but focused in the town centers rather than relying on the latent density in the single family neighborhoods. That's the best I can do with it on the spot, but this is a longer conversation. There will be plenty of time to check in on this going forward. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Hanson. Next speaker is Councillor Pope.
I have a question too before I get started, so please stop the timer. Regarding making an amendment, then, am I able to do that within this context now?
You can make an amendment. It's just the amendment has to be in order, which in the case of the last amendment, I couldn't make that work, meaning the ask was to remove something from the motion on the floor that wasn't in the motion on the floor. And so that's why I ruled that out of order. If you have another way of getting to your aim, I'm open to it. I think that I get what you were getting at. If option A had been on the table, then the motion you had proposed would have lined up and it would have had an effect. It would have changed the wording of it. But since B was the one that was on the table and it didn't have that wording in it, there was no way to amend it in the fashion that you suggested. So I ruled it out of order. So yes, you can have an amendment if you so choose.
Well, but you'll just rule it out of order again.
If it's something I can't achieve, then yes.
Okay, well, I'll just get started then, I guess. So there's been a lot of fear mongering about the province and how it's forcing us to build more homes. In fact, I want to be clear on this. The district came up with its own numbers based on Metro Vancouver's population projections. Nothing the province said, 22,000. We came up with those numbers and the province said, okay, that's what your housing need is. So while you can debate the overall number of homes needed, the methodology and how it'll be reduced by new immigration policies, one thing is clear. the district must plan for and provide for some growth. To do nothing to keep the status quo and not change the official community plan is the equivalent of putting our heads in the sand. And in my opinion, it would be irresponsible not to make plans for a growing community. We know there is an urgent need for more affordable housing, including housing for the missing middle, the teachers, the nurses, firefighters, and caregivers, not to mention the garbage collectors and restaurant servers and small business employees who can't live here, even if they are making good money. So they commute every day across the bridge and make congestion worse, or they leave, like so many of our adult children, including mine and my neighbors. We must plan for growth, which brings me to the OCP. I'm supporting option A to enable growth to be distributed throughout the district while still keeping 80% of new housing within town centers. But again, I'm proposing we defer any discussion on multiplexes to a later date when the legislation is passed. It's just confusing everything tonight, and we don't have all the answers. So it makes no sense to me why that would be ruled out of order. I'm going to give it another go. I would like to call for an amendment so that we remove any discussion within the OCP tonight surrounding multiplexes and SMU from this discussion until staff can report back with all the details, the implications, and until the legislation is actually passed.
So I'll seek clarification from the clerk. You know how I ruled on this one the last time, that it was trying to remove something from the motion that wasn't on the floor, and therefore I ruled it out of order. Was that in line?
Thank you, through your worship. I think the bylaw that's being considered for first reading at this time is bylaw 8743 for the OCP bylaw. As I understand it, that does not contain multiplex housing referenced in the bylaw itself. Therefore, the amendment would not be removing anything from the current bylaw that's being contemplated or considered by council. Therefore, it would be in order to rule the amendment out of order. An amendment that could be placed on the floor would be a follow-up motion from Councillor Pope to direct staff to pause the discussion on multiplexes outside of what is currently being contemplated as a follow-up, and asking staff to report back on that. That would be in order.
Okay,
I'm
well,
going to come back to you for a follow-up motion when we finish this discussion in that order, if that's okay.
Yes.
Already on the numbers that we were.
Just want to check. I'm willing to do a double check on that at the end, but you still have a minute 22. Are you?
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Okay, so just want to check with Mr. Milburn on that question. For the housing needs report, did the District of North Vancouver come up with their own number, or was that number given to us from Metro Vancouver and the province of BC?
Thank you. Yes, happy to provide that clarification. The provincial government not only created an expectation, they actually created the calculation methodology and actually worked with UBC to prepare a calculator. The district analyzed using the provincial calculator and then generated a number which was a provincial number. So it wasn't a methodology recommended by staff. It was a methodology of calculating future housing need that was mandated by the province, and we simply followed the calculation methodology that they prepared. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clarifies that. Thank you.
Can I just clarify that that
minute 22.
methodology is based on Metro Vancouver's population projections? That's what we state on our website.
Yeah, I think the relevant point was that in your statement, you said that that the District of North Vancouver came up with their own number. It wasn't the province or Metro. We're the ones that came up with 22. I think that's been clarified by Mr. Milburn, that it actually came from their calculator and their calculations. And so it didn't originate with us. still have a minute 22 if you'd like to.
Thank you. So option A allows us to expand housing and density to other areas, including along the Marine Drive corridor from Capilano Road to Capilano Mall, which will also be along the bus rapid transit line. Significantly, that corridor could take so much strain off some of the town centers like Lynn Valley. But option B that's being proposed and seconded tonight will force most new growth into town centers because the developers will be incentivized to only build towers and parking lots and thousands of more new homes in those town centers. So traffic congestion will only get worse. So if you're okay with more traffic and congestion around town centers, then by all means, option B is the answer. Keep things exactly as they are, and you'll continue to get more of what we've got. But I'm going with option A because we need growth, we need a vision, we need a plan for the future and for our children, and that's what option A provides. Thank you.
Councillor Pope. Next, I have Councillors Ma and Beck. Councillor Ma, your comments, please.
Thank you. As I mentioned when Bill 44 first came before council back in June 2024, I said that council needs to work with the provincial government, but the province's approach with allowing fourplex on each lot is not appropriate then, and it's not appropriate now. I'm willing to listen to people, and I've heard comments from people that support both options. When you look at everyone's feedback, it's a challenging issue. However, I still believe that the provincial government should not direct how and where the district should accommodate future growth. This council represents its residents and should take into account the feedback from those residents. The district just reviewed its OCP back in 2021, about 4 years ago, and public engagement is a long and detailed process to ensure people have a say. In speaking with staff, I know we talked about it tonight, we're on track to meet our target from that OCP of 10,000 units from 2011 to 2030. That's 500 built units each year. At this point, I don't see any clear justification that we need to provide the capacity for over 22,000 units, especially when we don't, or we haven't received any commitment of funding for infrastructure, healthcare, parks, transit to accommodate that growth that the provincial government wants. These infrastructure and other needs are things that make our community a place where people want to live. I don't believe we should try to build a community while throwing away things that make our community great. I know some people accuse us of being NIMBYs and against development, but I don't believe that's a fair or accurate statement. Since I've been on council for, I guess it's coming up to 3 years. Oh. I voted with council to approve many housing projects, Cap U, Seylynn, Little Wet Road, Capilano Road, East Keith, Maplewood, and Mount Seymour Parkway. There's a couple other projects in the pipeline that I voiced support for, Lynn Valley and another project in Seylynn for student accommodation. I want to be clear, I support housing, but it needs to be done prudently and implemented with the support of the community. Option B does not say stop it, but in my opinion, it conveys to people that we will do growth in a responsible manner. Therefore, I support the new staff's recommendation of option B. But I would encourage everyone here tonight and those observing, stay engaged because this ain't over yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Thank you, everyone, for your comments around the table. I want to start by recognizing that this discussion about how and where our community grows is probably one of the most important discussions that we'll have this term of council. It's about the kind of future that we want our community to and how we want our community to look. It's not just about housing numbers. It's about how we want the district to be in 10, 20, or 30 years from now. Like many of my colleagues, I share the frustration about how the province has handled this process. The legislation has come quickly and the expectations have been significant. There's been limited time for local dialogue, although I believe our staff have done an exceptional job in the short amount of time that they've had to engage with the community about how we grow, and the options that they've come up with, I think, do respond to what they've heard. That said, the province has set the direction, and now it is up to us to decide whether we simply comply or, in my opinion, whether we lead. That's what this OCP update is really about, taking ownership of how we grow instead of letting someone else decide for us. Option A, in my opinion, represents a better way forward. Option A gives us that opportunity. It builds on our existing OCP vision, which we reviewed in the last term of council, and it was shown, that it is a very solid OCP, focusing 75 to 90% of our growth in our town and village centers like Lynn Valley, Lynn Creek, Lionsgate, Maplewood, and Edgemont. Option A allows us to introduce a little more housing diversity in carefully chosen areas nearby. I think that's the key, is that it's carefully chosen areas. It's not everywhere. And either of the options tonight are going to prevent small scale multi-unit housing from being a part of them. So it's not, in my opinion, it's not appropriate everywhere to have that type of housing. But again, this is a situation that continues to evolve. I believe option A allows us to plan our infrastructure in a smarter way with pre-zoning in the right places and a framework for funding through development cost charges, rather than tackling every single rezoning one at a time, which is how we've done it so far. In my opinion, that's sufficient, transparent, and far more predictable for both residents and applicants. Option B, I believe, is protecting the status quo. It keeps our current front framework unchanged, relying on the limited 3-unit allowance that we passed last year. And it, in effect, says we'll do the bare minimum that the province requires. But the reality is the status quo isn't working for many of our residents. We hear this from families who've grown up here but can't afford to buy or even rent nearby. We hear from local employers, as we have in every public hearing for redevelopments, who can't find staff because people can't live close to where they work. And we see our own children and aging parents leaving the North Shore because there simply aren't the housing options that meet their needs. I believe the option B that we're looking at, we're choosing to freeze those realities in place, to plan less and react more. And in my opinion, that's not leadership. It's not sustainable. I think we have a chance to build a better plan, one that keeps growth in the right areas, one that balances housing choice with good design and allows us to manage infrastructure responsibly. It's been supported by much of the community, and option A, as we've seen in the report, received a considerable amount of support through the engagement done by our professional planning staff and by the principals of our existing OCP. So we can acknowledge the shortcomings of the province while still moving forward with a plan that reflects our own priorities, a plan that's rooted in local knowledge and evidence and in fairness. At its heart, this is about ensuring the next generation can see a future here, that the teachers, nurses, tradespeople, and small business owners can live in the community that they serve. It's about creating a planning framework that is honest about growth and realistic about infrastructure and thoughtful about design. I believe when you're looking at the two options here tonight, there's only one that gives us a path. And I believe option B turns us inward. So while I recognize the frustrations and I share some of the concerns about specific neighborhoods and about provincial overreach, I believe our job tonight is to lead, to put forward a made in DNB solution that reflects who we are and who we want to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. As has already been said, the province is literally demanding that we increase to 22,000 units. They've done that without consultation. They've done that without providing any proper planning for infrastructure. They've done that with no funding. They have literally taped over the lips of any of our staff that went and consulted with them, so that when our staff came back here, they couldn't even talk to us about what was going on. That's not democracy. I mean, I'm absolutely stunned at what's going on in this province. If it's not Metro who has non-disclosure agreements, so we can't find out about what's going on with the wastewater plant, now it's the province and we can't find out what's coming down the line that's going to affect our municipality. Both of these options do meet the requirement. Also, the OCP is going to be monitored every 5 years, but we know that Bill 25 is going to be approved, probably in this year. So no matter what we vote for tonight, Bill 25 is still going to have a huge impact, and it's going to change what's going on after tonight. I think this is a huge overreach by the province. There's been little to no consultation about anything. And I think what it does is it puts us on a slippery slope. One thing that has really bothered me extremely is that you guys can't come and talk to us when we can't have a public hearing to hear you come. That's when we get the best information. That's the most convenient usually for the community to come out and talk, not sending all kinds of emails. You do that too, and we appreciate that. But a public hearing is where we actually pay attention and hear from you. And it can go on for 1, 2, 3, 4 nights. We really get an honest opinion about what you want. And if we pre-zone, such as in A, with that density, that increased density, you can't go back. There will be no public hearings, because once that zoning's in and it's in compliance with the OCP, it will be adopted into the OCP. We can't have any public hearings. So we're talking about a massive amount of land in the district getting pre-zoned, and there will never be a public hearing as long as it's consistent. So it cuts your voices off. You won't be able to talk. So I think that's a slippery slope, and we have to be aware of that. As far as the infrastructure, the province is basically putting the horse before the cart. Like I said, no costing done, no planning, proper planning done, no consultation with the municipality they're dealing with, no senior funding. We don't even know where the infrastructure is going. And we are struggling with one hospital. We are struggling with schools. We are struggling with a lot of infrastructure. We're having water mains bursting now that we are putting in because they're already 50 to 80 years old. We're replacing those. If we put this density in, we're going to have to replace again. And it's in a time when we're supposed to be watching our dollars, your dollars. Property taxes too. Property tax assessment people tax at the best and highest use. So once your property gets rezoned and it can have 6 units on it, look out what your taxes are going to be. Whether it ever gets built on your property or not, your taxes are just going to skyrocket. So that's another concern of mine. Town center extensions. I just have a particular interest in Lynn Valley's town center extension because I live on Kirkstone. I'm concerned about all of them, but that's the one I really want to mention a couple things about. The way that town center for Lynn Valley is extended, it's included Kirkstone Park, it's included a church, it's included Karen Magnuson Arena. Now, if we okay that, does that mean we're going to build on top of our park? Is Kirkstone Park going to be totally ripped out? Because it will be zoned to be able to do that. There goes the tree canopy that we've been trying to protect for so many years. That just makes me curious. So I need clarification on what's really happening if that town center gets extended. We need more densification, but not building over what we already have. And I think the people who know best are the people who are on the front lines, which is you and us, and working through our community. Getting somebody in Victoria to say we can build here, and then you look on the map and it's a cemetery. They want to build on a cemetery. I mean, That's the kind of craziness that's going on in Victoria. So I want the neighborhood not to lose the right to decide what works for them. Land is the greatest contributor to costs. And once you rezone for more density, that land is going to be valued. You're going to have a target on your back. You're going to have developers coming in and trying to get you or your neighbors to sell so that they can build. So that's the end of my comments, but just to say that I'm obviously in favor of B. And we have to choose one tonight. We have to. So I may find a few things with B I don't like, but.
Thank you. And I'll just clarify that on parks and rec center spaces, because they're owned by us, nobody else can apply to change it to density or housing on it. It would be entirely up to the council, which it already is entirely up to the council. So it doesn't actually change it for the rec center and park space. So yes, they're included in the map, but it doesn't change it because we're the owner. It could be in or it could be out. You're correct. It doesn't materially change the use of that space. Councillor Pope, you have a second 2 minutes. Councillor Back, you did speak over your time, but a little bit, but go ahead. Councillor Pope, go ahead.
Thanks. One thing I forgot to mention previously was referred to by Councillor Back, and that is about the community engagement on this, which I think is enormously significant because for many reasons, but the district spent a ton of money and staff time and resources to find out what people here think is best. And residents decisively said they want growth to be distributed throughout the community. Option A, in fact, 68% preferred to build new homes across the district as a mix of multiplexes, townhouses, and apartments, and only 32% preferred building in dense urban centers in predominantly high-rise apartments. So again, so much effort, so much time has gone into this whole process, only to have it be apparently stalled by members of this council who are voting for Plan B, option B, to keep the status quo. It is extremely disappointing to me. I'm sure it will be to staff, and it's no wonder people complain a lot about how nothing ever gets done in the district. It's because of situations like this.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Thank you for allowing me to speak to use a second 2 minutes. I realize I went a little bit over in my first comments. Thank you for clarifying that there is no contemplation in either of these options for rezoning parkland. I think it just adds to the confusion, comments like that, to some of the, I would say it is fear mongering that we've kind of been hearing some of. So I just want to emphasize the amount of work that staff have put in to get us to this point tonight, and that should option B be what's supported by the majority of council, we are effectively killing option A. Is that correct? Can I ask that? There would be no further discussion about an option A, refining option A or anything like that.
Until you have the final vote, it's the will of council. And so if the will of council changes between here and there to something that more closely reflects A, then it's still the will of council up until the final implementation of the OCP. But staff will move forward based on the option B and what it will present. But none of this limits what council can actually decide on in the ultimate vote.
Right. Well, I want to reiterate how unfortunate I think it is that we can't have a more informed discussion about option A, and taking the issue of SMU and multiplexes out. And I realize Councillor Pope tried to do this because I feel like that has become largely the focus because it's contentious in certain neighborhoods in the community. I appreciate that, and I can tell you that I don't support it in every neighborhood. But I think that there is more to option A that can be refined, and it does represent a plan. Option B is not a plan. And I just want to reiterate again, the amount of support that we heard in extensive community engagement for a plan that takes our current OCP, which focuses growth in the right areas and enhances it to provide the sort of missing middle housing that we're very much missing, and just more diversity generally of housing. Yeah, in still building on the current OCP. We are effectively killing that option altogether here tonight. Should option B be what passes?
Thank you, Councillor Back. And I think we're near full time on it. Councillor Maude a second time, but I think did Councillor Forbes have a second time? All right. There's still two more speakers with 2 minutes each. Oh, you spoke your full 6. Councillor Maude.
I still have time.
Wrap it up and bring us home, please. And then we can get on to the cannabis discussion, so much more important.
Oh, man, we need that
calm
now.
things down around this place.
Sorry, did I say that? Okay. There's passion on both sides. I'm gonna give that to the members of council, but there is, in my mind, a misrepresentation of option B. It doesn't mean stop, don't do anything, put our head in the sand. I think that's incorrect. We are still building this community in a responsible way. For some people, it won't be fast enough. For other people, it's too fast. I think option B is the prudent and responsible way of doing it. There are still projects coming forward to our community, and it's up to us to decide what we want. Okay, we got to send a message to developers and our partners. Hey, if we want more senior housing, let's work on that. I take some offense to say we're just going to close up shop. Our staff are working with different agencies to get different get funding for different projects for different target groups or different groups that need housing. So there is housing being developed in the district. It may not be as fast as somebody wants, but when we have a provincial government that should be our partner, changing the rules on short notice, it's very hard to keep up. And instead of just running after them and doing whatever they want, I think it's important to remember that we represent the residents of this district. We will always listen. It doesn't mean that we have to agree, but we have to take time to listen. And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maude. Okay, council, we've had a good go round, about an hour and a half on this item. And so let's call the question, put it to a vote. All those in favor of option B? All those opposed? The matter passes with councillors Back, Pope, and Hanson opposed. Just as no, there was no amendment. I'm going to come back to you for a follow-up motion in just a moment, Councillor Pope. So just hang on a sec. So just want to be clear about this. So that's tepid support with 4 votes, and so I would encourage staff to reach out to all of us and see what we can do to refine things along the way. I know that as we go into a public hearing, it gets a little more complex, but maybe there's still some more support to be found. I'm going to check with the clerk on the date for that public hearing. Do you have a date in mind for that public hearing?
Yes, thank you for your worship. Tentatively scheduled for November 12th.
November 12th. And I just encourage everybody, whether you support it or not, we do encourage participation through our public hearings. And so don't assume that today was the vote that ends all votes. Participate going forward. We will have a full public hearing on the matter on November 12th. But you'll have to double check the agenda leading up to that date in case anything changes. But at this point, that's our intended date. Now, Councillor Pope, did you have a follow-up motion that you wanted to form, or have you shared that with the clerk? Or okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we've completed this discussion. We're going to move on this evening to the last item up on the agenda, which is non-medical retail cannabis policy, business license fees. It's been moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Hanson. I don't know that we need a full presentation on this.
No,
It's
we
pretty
don't.
self-explanatory.
Fine, we're good.
So council,
Question?
if there's sign up to debate, sorry, Councillor Back, did that from before, or did you want to have comments on this policy? Back, if you'd like to comment on it, you're welcome to.
I was going to say briefly, I do support the staff recommendation. When we first set our cannabis framework in 2019, I think it did make sense to proceed cautiously with tighter hours and higher fees, but it's now 6 years later, and I think the data is clear that these businesses are operating responsibly, enforcement calls are low, and costs are minimal. So I think aligning our hours and fees and regional standards is fair, and supports local small business, which is what I'm about. So it's a sign of how far we've come, again, as a community in the last 6 years.
Very much. Councillor Hanson, you had some comments on the matter?
I'll keep it super brief, except to say, I think the greater we can align our cannabis policy to our liquor policy on these things like fees and hours, the better.
Well, I'm going to prepare to call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
Move
Thank you very much,
adjournment.
Council. We have completed the business of this evening's meeting with the one exception. We usually prepare an opportunity for reports. Would any member of council like to make a report? Seeing none, adjournment has been moved. I will accept. Thank you very much to our staff for preparing the reports for consideration. Thank you to the members of the public for staying through item 8.6 and then leaving. Thank you to council for considering these tense matters. We really appreciate it. Everybody have a fantastic week. Good night.